Welcome to Tales of an Entrepreneur, where we uncover the untold stories and raw lessons and surprising twists behind the journey of building a business. Because every real entrepreneur has a story worth telling. I'm Jenny Cross, founder of the East Midlands Real Entrepreneurs Club and CEO of Cross Productions, a human-led, tech-powered marketing agency. Today, we're diving into the incredible journey of a business that has scaled up to a multi-million-pound turnover, operating with just under 100 staff and running across 4 factories, 3 of which they own, equating to 25,000 square feet of production space. At the heart of this success is Jake Karia, CEO of Food Attraction, a first-generation immigrant from East Africa. Jake's journey is one of determination, resilience, and innovation. From arriving in the UK to building a thriving food manufacturing empire, his story is testament to what can be achieved with vision and perseverance. Food Attraction began its journey in 1996 as a small family venture, with Jake and his team focused on creating innovative, high-quality food products. Over the years, the company has gained recognition for its unique and versatile approach to food manufacturing, most notably through their signature brand, Jake and Names. Known for their creative take on street food-inspired snacks, they've revolutionised convenient food. With a focus on quality and authenticity, Jake has successfully scaled the business, getting his products stocked in major retailers including Asda, Tesco, Sainsbury's and Boots, with over 100,000 units sold weekly. But Food Attraction is more than just a brand. It's a story of innovation, resilience and a deep-rooted passion for excellence. Today, we'll explore some of the highs and the challenges and the real secrets behind Jake's success. Jake, welcome to the show. It's an absolute pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me.
So, my first question, obviously with a marketing background, is what inspired the marketing behind your products?
The marketing behind it, really, just to get people to know who we were. I just love food, and we developed a range of products. Developing a range of products is one thing, then we've got to communicate that to the consumer, tell them what the product actually is, and inspire them to take the product off the shelf. I didn't realise that actually if you price a product, something that I would go and buy, people aren't necessarily going to take it off the shelf because there's a money part to it attached. And so they want to make sure that what they're buying is actually going to deliver the result that they're looking for from it. So we worked very closely with our branding agency to come up with a range of packages that actually inspired them to take it off the shelf. That looks dead easy, but you don't know how much work goes into actually looking at where the logo should be positioned, what words should go where, what graphic should be in the background. So yeah, a lot of work goes into it.
Yep, totally understand and respect the hard work behind that. How did you feel when your product was first seen, when you walked into a supermarket and first saw one of your products on the shelf?
Jenny, it still blows me away now. My wife and I travel quite often. We pay roulette when we walk into shops. I wonder if our products are going to be there. And it still blows me away when they end up in the most obscurest of places. We launched on Virgin Atlantic and we were on the flight to India in there, and I hadn't actually told the staff that that's what we'd done. To me, it was a listing, we were going ahead with it. And then that one particular Christmas, a lot of our staff travelled over to India on holiday, and my phone was blowing up in the evening because they were taking videos of themselves with the air hostesses saying, look what we're eating. But can you imagine being on a plane and you're just sitting there waiting for your meal to come out to you, and suddenly one of the products that you'd made in the factory has just landed in front of you? And that's how I feel when I walk into store now and I see the products in there. It's great. And then when you see somebody take it off the shelf as well, yeah, it still gives me a bit of a giggle.
How important do you think pride is for the team? Not just from yourself, obviously you've got a lot of pride in what you do, but the fact that your team clearly have a lot of pride too, how important is that?
I think it's got to be so high up on the list, because look, if they buy into what you're doing, they buy into the ethos, they buy into the quality and the standards, that then resonates all the way through what they do. So everybody wears branded clothes, all Jake and Names clothes in there. And that's because I want them to wear that with pride. Whenever now we secure a new listing or the product's in a new place, we'll tell the whole team about it. We have Kebab Friday, so we all sit together and have lunch together on a Friday with certain rules. So you're not allowed to talk about work and nobody eats until the last person sits down. But it's all about being together as a team in there. And that, it sounds odd that we all have lunch together in that way and we're not allowed to talk about work, but it is about being together and stuff and knowing that you're all part of this brand and you're all out there working together.
And That sounds fantastic. My question is, as you've grown the business, you didn't start with nearly 100 staff. So there'll be things like that you've introduced along the way. Where do you get these ideas from?
So one of the questions I thought you were going to ask me right at the beginning, I practiced it in my head, so I'm going to just come out with it now anyway, was what made me do what I want to do in there, and it will lead to the answer that you're looking for. It wasn't about the money. It was, for me, it was about being able to act on my own decisions. It was about me coming up with an idea in the morning, and by the afternoon, we've actually put it into play. We've worked it out. Does it work? Doesn't it work? And can we do it? The added benefit for me is the fact that I can come up with a dish in the morning and we've cooked it in the afternoon and I get to eat it. That's a really good thing. But for me, being an entrepreneur was about being able to act on your own decisions. So as days go by, you come up with ideas, and I haven't got to run it by anybody. I can say, right guys, this is what we're going to go ahead and do. And don't get me wrong, there have been some really crazy, wacky ideas that haven't gone very far at all. But actually the ideas that I wanted to progress with, the breakfast club that we used to have, the uniforms, the lunches, and things like that, they do come into effect, but they gel the team together. Because look, I'm only one person and that business is the sum of its parts. I can do the part that I play in it, but actually if those guys are not behind me, supporting me, the business isn't going to deliver the results that it is. And we've had year on year growth. As you kindly said at the beginning, we're in all the major retailers, we're in some of the airlines, some of the railways. When I started the business, if you told me back then, this is where we're going to be, I wouldn't have believed it. I dreamt big, I know that, but not that big. But I know there's still so much more for us to do. And that dream's only going to be realised with the support of all the other guys that we have in the business.
So talk to me a bit more about letting go. So you've recently brought on board somebody on quite senior level to help run things. How difficult was that to let go?
To be fair, he wasn't actually brought on to take that role. He was brought on, his name's Simon, he was brought on to work alongside me within the business in the commercial side. But I could see the business growing and I could see that actually he brought on a different skill set. We have a new finance guy, Ted, that again brings a different skill set in there. And it's not that they are the same as me. They're very different in there, which is what the business actually needed. So look, I am a part of the business. I am not the business. And so I've got to look at what's best for the business. And what was best for the business at that point was having other people that are actually helping the business grow. But working closely with these guys and having that kind of, still that family culture within the business means I still get to hear and see what goes on within the business. And you only appoint people to that level that you can work with. And Simon actually was with me probably over 2.5 years, I think he was, before I made that decision. But that's, as I said, not what he came on to do in the business.
So when you look at taking somebody on for a role like that, what would you say maybe the 3 key things that you're looking for in a person?
Somebody that brings on a higher skill set to the skill set that I have. You listen to any podcast of any entrepreneur, and it will be that they surround themselves by people that are better than they are. I'm just better at controlling them in there sometimes. But it would be that they bring on a different skill set to the skill set that I have. It would be people that share my vision in the business, because there's no point in me having a vision this way and they're looking to take the business that way. There'll just be that constant clash. Actually, funnily enough, I have to say, when I recruited Simon, we went through the whole interview process. Then at the interview process, look, I was a product of the 80s in there. And at the end of the interview, I said to him, what do you think of Rick Astley? And he said to me, sorry. And I said, what do you think of Rick Astley? And he said, well, do you want the official answer or the unofficial answer? And I said, well, give me both. He said, okay, the official answer is, I'm also a product of the 80s. I listen to the music. It reminds me of my college days and stuff. And I said, okay. I said, what's the unofficial answer? And he said, as soon as I hear it, I start dancing around the kitchen like a loony. And I thought, brilliant, you're the right man for the job. Because we have that same sort of mindset in there and the same taste in music. But we have that sort of mindset, and that to me is really important. Somebody that I can bounce off, I can ring at 7 o'clock in the, not that I do, and talk things through, and we can have But then he sense checks what I do. He's not shy about saying, what you're doing isn't right and stuff.
So one of the things many entrepreneurs have is sleepless nights. Something's on their mind. Am I going to meet the next wage bill? Is this next line I'm launching going to work? Big decisions. Sometimes it can be the small decisions that keep you up at night. Are there any particular moments that stand out to you where you've had real sort of, I'm on the edge, I don't know how this is going to go, or something that's worried you massively so?
Last night, knowing I was coming on this podcast with you was scary. The sleepless nights don't go. You still have them because you're so invested in the business. But that kind of not worry culture, but that extra thought process comes from all the things that you go through when you're setting that business up, because you're never too far away from thinking that I could lose this, or that something catastrophic could happen. And when you think of all the things that have happened recently, like COVID, like Brexit, like energy crisis, and all sorts of things like that, they're all things that manifest themselves and play a part in your mind all the time. We had a situation years and years and years ago when we first set the business up. We launched into a big retailer. The retailer, we did a lot of development work, and we launched finger foods for their Christmas line. And it was the first time we'd ever dealt with a retailer. The factory itself was probably 3 months old at the time, so we were still learning. This new site is 17 times bigger than the old site, so the whole thing was so different from what we'd done previously, and we'd never dealt with a retailer before. Anyway, I went in, we pitched for this business, we presented, and they decided to take the product on board. Now the thing is, when you have a Christmas product, you can't keep up with the volume in real time, because they buy so much over such a short period of time that you just can't keep up with it. So what you do is you manufacture, you freeze the product down, and then you hold on to that product, and as they start to order it, you defrost the product and put it onto the shelves. But it's all done under a controlled fashion in there. And we produced all the stock. We had a fax from them, we had a fax from them to say, back in the days of fax, this is what we're going to be ordering, this is how much we want of it. And then at the bottom, it says clearly in bold in black, is if you do not deliver according to this forecast, we will fine you the full retail value.
Wow.
Now you imagine we've got a brand new site that was over budget, that was late opening, and then we've had this massive order. So to say we'd sort of gone from that to that was an understatement. The volume was huge, the commitment, the financial commitment was huge as well. But we produced it, we put it into cold store, and then the retailer was calling this off. And then each day we'd get faxes through, we were then sending that fax through to the cold store was pulling it out, date coding it and sending it into the retailer. Christmas Eve, I get a phone call from the distributor to say, Jake, we've got some stock left over, what do you want us to do with it? I said, well, according to this forecast, there should only be a small amount left over, you can just hand it out to all the staff. And he said to me, I think we've got a bit more than a little bit, Jake, of stock left. And I said, well, how much stock have you got left? And he told me. And my blood just ran cold, because actually when I worked it out, it was just under half of the stock that they hadn't actually taken. It was just under 100 grams worth of stock that they hadn't taken. This is stuff that I've paid for already to be made and is now sat in storage. Spoke to the retailer. And I said, look, what's going on? And she said, yeah, I think we've over forecasted. She said, don't worry, we'll help you sell it after Christmas. Well, if you can't sell a Christmas line before Christmas, how can you sell it after Christmas? It ain't going to work. So when you go through situations like that, it shapes you and it makes you quite risk averse. It makes you quite sometimes scared to make some of those big decisions. But I think that's healthy. I think that gives you a sense check in there.
But that sick feeling in the pit of your stomach, I think it's not always a bad thing, is it? It gives you that reality check, that's sort of a bit of a pinch. But what did you do?
It wasn't just a feeling, I can tell you that. The staff supported us. We were in serious trouble. We spoke to the staff day after New Year's Day when we came back into work. Everyone was in tears over what had happened. There was enough catastrophe in that to close the business down, but we didn't. We were resilient, and you use words like resilience and things like that. I think it's actually madness, because on paper it doesn't work. It doesn't make sense. You know, you look at what you need to do to get through it, and actually you don't have that in there, but you somehow make it work. And that might be longer hours. It might be, you know, just juggling things around, but you have that mindset that no matter what comes your way, you're going to make it work. And when the staff sat back and said, look, we're happy to support you in anything that you need. We're not going anywhere. We know we've got tough times ahead of us, but we're here, we're staying with you. This is shop floor people. This is people that would never normally sit in front of a business owner and talk in that fashion, but they invested, not financially, but mentally and passionately in what we did, and they believed in it. That choked me.
It's got to give you some drive, though, surely.
It did, and we didn't take any investment from anybody, but actually we turned the business round. And for me, it was that focus. And ever since then, Jenny, I have to say that my staff are my priority. They are the ones that put food on our tables, literally, in there. And I'm really pleased to say that, you know, from 24, 25 years ago, the staff I took on then, some of them are still with me today. And they're not family or anything, but they've become family to us in there. But that's so important. And
I think so many business owners underestimate the power of having a team behind you and actually looking after your people, because they're the ones, you're only ever as good as your team, aren't you? That, you know, you can drive them, you can give them the vision, share that with them, but they're the ones sort of getting behind it. And if you can instill some of that passion into them, things are going to go a lot further, a lot faster, aren't they?
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, you can only do that for so long, because as the business grows bigger, you get different layers of management coming in, and that touchy-feely on the end person just gets further and further away. But my job then is to permeate that family vision to the next layer of management, that then pass that on down, so that culture still stays there within the business. I think that's really, really important, because people should be at work because they want to be at work, not just because they're getting a wage and that's it. They should feel that they're a part of the business.
So there's a lot of talk, certainly since COVID, around work-life balance, hybrid working. You know, the world of work has changed so much. How do you manage work-life balance? So actually getting some time out with your kids, with your family, walking your dog. I've seen you doing that a number of times. How important is it to get that balance, and how easy is it?
Yeah, I'm not sure I walk the dog. I think he walks me half the time, to be fair. I don't know. I've just always had boundless energy. When I was at school, when I finished school at 16, I had 2 full-time jobs. I worked during the day in a clothes shop, a designer clothes shop, finished there at 5:30, walked down to Pizza Hut, put on my nylon trousers and my crimpline shirt and my cap with no skull part to it, and worked through till 2 o'clock in the morning. And I think that work ethic has always been with me. Over time, I love the gym. So most days I'll be in the gym at 6:30 in the morning. My wife and I, we meditate in the morning, and we yoga as well. So actually, when I get to work at 9 o'clock,
I've done
as most people have done during the whole day in there. When I come in and I tell the team, well, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this. The only thing I have to say is I have to have my double espresso when I first wake up. That's the first thing I have to have. And I don't know if it's a psychological thing that I've marked the start of the day because I've had that coffee. But then I think as you get further engrossed in business, there are certain markers that you have that take you to the next level. So, you know, getting in the morning, going through your messages, well, okay, that's that part done, then you move on to the next bit. It's trying to be methodical. But I do think I have a pretty good work-life balance. I love cooking. So most weekends we're out or entertaining or whatever in there. But yeah.
So work ethic, something you've obviously always had. Do you think it's something you're born with, or do you think it's something someone can learn? Do you think it's one or the other, or a mix? I know you've spoke to me previously about your parents' work ethic, and they were very hardworking. Do you think that's something you got from them? Do you think everybody inherits it?
Good question. I think I did a university thing a few years back, and I got asked the question, what do we need to study to be an entrepreneur? To which I said, well, if you're asking that question, you're not an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur is a part of you. There's no line that you step over that makes you an entrepreneur. And I absolutely believe that in your formative years, in your teenage years, it's what you go through then that shapes you to be who you are. There may be an inherent part of it in there with you, but something has to trigger that. And it quite often, it's actually adversity that makes you then that resilient person to then become an entrepreneur and want to be bigger and better than you actually are.
So that leads me to another question, and it's a debate I've had a number of times with a number of people. Can entrepreneurship be taught?
No, I don't think it can. I don't think it can. Because, Jenny, if you go back to what I said, on paper quite often, what you're trying to achieve doesn't work. If I look at what we've built and how we've built it in there, on paper it didn't work. But we didn't take no for an answer. We kept pushing the boundaries. When you look at Jeff Bezos or you look at Elon Musk and stuff, and you look at the businesses that they built, you can't write a business plan for something like that. You just fall into the next part that falls into the next part that falls into the next part.
It's like opening a can of worms.
Exactly.
It's a domino rally.
Yeah, domino, yeah. And that's how it works. You have a vision to do this bit, you do that bit, then that falls into that bit, that then falls into that bit, and the business just grows on that way. But along that way, some of those dominoes are going to fall the wrong way. And you've got to be able to have those guts inside you to be able to get through that, pick yourself up, and then come at it again in there, yeah.
Okay, so to you, what would you feel is most important, courage or curiosity?
100% courage in there, because I've got to have conviction behind my decisions in there, because some of those decisions and some of those ideas don't look right in there, but you've got to be able to push that through and just not take the no for that answer. When you look at KFC, when you look at the person that started KFC, how many doors he knocked on before somebody actually took on the chicken in there. That's no different to us. You know, you get pushbacks all the time, you get issues. Yeah, when COVID hit, you imagine we lost 2/3 of our business overnight in there. You know, we sent deliveries out on March 22nd, and on the 23rd, we were getting phone calls from delivery companies to say, actually, they've closed the gates, they won't let the deliveries through, even though we've got a signed purchase order and stuff. To get through something like that, you've got to have a certain amount of courage, or a huge amount of courage, to be able to continue.
I'm a big believer in messing things up is one of the best ways to learn lessons. But often people will mess something up and they don't learn from it, which feels like you've gone through all that pain for what? When we talked about earlier, you were saying about the sleepless night or the stress of that Christmas order. What's the biggest thing that you learned from that you've then put into play moving forward?
Don't make the same mistake twice. I just make new mistakes each time. And unfortunately, as the business gets bigger, the mistakes get bigger in there. But I have more people I can blame it on now because I've got a bigger team. Actually, don't bet more than you can lose. I think that's the critical thing. In the past, when we were a new growing business, you bet all on red in there. And now I look back at it, I think, oh my God, how did we not trip up? But now we only ever risk what we can afford to lose. And quite often, I have a great marketing person, Malvika, who I always say that when we're doing things, test and learn. There are so many innovative ways to market a business out there. Spend an amount, see what sort of return you get back, then we can invest more in there. And so you have to test and learn.
And the world changes, and the way consumers buy, the way we want to purchase things changes so fast. It's so hard. You almost feel like you get something right and then it changes again and it changes again. How much does it excite you, the change?
A lot. But like I said, I have a great team that picks up on all the different trends and stuff. I get a little bit annoyed when I see something on LinkedIn or I see an advert somewhere and I send it to them and say, we should do something like that in there. But we've got a great video company here in Leicester, Joey, that is just so forward thinking when it comes to different ideas and stuff. But you've got to constantly be innovating. It's the same with food. You know, what we make here are filled naan breads. It sounds so easy now, but nobody had done it before we launched it, before we developed that product. in there. And it's all those ideas that now look like second nature, but actually they weren't back then. They were innovative, and you have to have the courage to be able to drive that message through, support that message, and inform people and educate people what that product actually is.
If you were to look at your business and think, right, what's next for me? Where would you get that inspiration from?
That's an easy one. So look, Walker's Crisps, right? I remember when Walker's Crisps was a Leicester-centric brand. You could only buy Walker's here in Leicester. And I know when I used to go and visit family, and I think we're talking late 70s, very early 80s this was now, when we were visiting family away, they'd say, oh, can you bring some of those Walker's Crisps? Because back then it was KP and things like that, never tasted as good as Walker's. And yet you look at Walker's now, you look at the fact that Leicester has the biggest crisp factory in Europe, I think it is now. You look at brands like Ginsters and stuff, they all started somewhere to be where they are. The only thing holding you back is your own imagination. You know, when we first started, we almost by accident landed Harvey Nichols as a customer. And when I got the business and we put 6 products onto their deli counter, I sat back and I thought, God, why can't I get into Harrods or Fortnum's or Selfridges? And actually I picked up the phone, spoke to them, went in, presented. Some people could say it's down to my wit and charm, but I don't think it was. It was down to the food. And actually at one point we were on all 4 deli counters. And that was only because we asked for the business in there. So sometimes the only thing holding us back up is our own imagination. There is so much that we can do if we put our mind to it. And that's where being an entrepreneur and having that single vision and that drive and that courage and a little bit of madness in there gets you to that end result.
Are there any books that you would recommend or podcasts that you enjoy listening to?
So I've just started Diary of a CEO. I'm probably
very late to the party, but yeah, fair enough.
I can't find 2.5 hours to sit down and listen to something in there.
The trick is listen to it on 1.5 speed just while you're in the car. So then you get snippets of it as you're driving.
Yeah, but that'll just make me laugh because then it sounds like he's on helium or something in there. I like autobiographies. So I read Alan Sugar's autobiography, Mike Tyson. I'm reading the Ayrton Senna autobiography. These are single-minded, driven people. And you look at the adversities and the hurdles that they had to get over to be where they are. You know, you celebrate the successes that they have now, but you seldom know the stories and the journey that they had to take to get them. And that, when you read stuff like that, it helps justify and crystallize what you've been through and realize that actually I'm not the only one going through all those things, those mistakes and things like that in there. Richard Branson, same, when you look at his journey and stuff. Not that I put myself into the same category as any of those guys, but their aspirations, and they've been on a journey. And I think any entrepreneur in any business, I think we all run parallels. You know, my journey is probably no different to most other entrepreneurs. And actually, when you share a story like this and you listen to other people's stories, you suddenly sit there and it's like that Churchill dog advert. Everyone's sitting there nodding their heads because we've all been through the same thing in there. So yeah, I love autobiographies mainly when I get a chance to read.
Thank you so much for taking the time to come and talk with us today. It's been brilliant to be able to pick your brains and hear some of your stories and challenges. I think everybody listening will be able to take at least something from the words and the lessons that you've been through, and it just shows that, you know, that mindset really does play a huge game, you know, a huge part in the bigger game. If you want to be successful, the only person stopping you is you half the time. So Jake's going to be coming along to the next Entrepreneurs Dinner. Jake's going to be talking to us about how to scale a sustainable business. And the idea of these episodes is about sharing some nuggets, some insights, and to try and lift each other up by sharing those stories. These conversations are a great way to do that. So to close off, I've got one last question. What question would you like me to ask our next guest?
Why did they do it?
Why did they do it?
Yeah, why did they start a business? I know that seems such a generic question, but everybody's got different motivations. I think for me, it was always a part of me in there. I was always going to open up my own business. I just didn't know what. I'm still quite not sure what I should do, but food it is for now.
One last question, actually. Which is your favourite flavour?
I'm not a vegetarian, but I have to say the chickpea masala is my favourite. So I don't know if you've seen, but the logo, my brother and I are both very different, which is why the fonts are very different. The third partner in the business is my wife, so she's the and, because she's the glue that holds us together. My sister is also in the business as well, so she's the apostrophe. We said when she passes probation, she'll be a line underneath, but she's still on probation. We're 4 years down the line, but she's still on probation.
Love it. So for those watching, it's the chickpea masala that's recommended. And to those listening, get yourself down to Sainsbury's or Tesco's or any of the other supermarkets that stock Jake and Names and grab yourself a bite to eat. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jenny.
See, is it? See, I would naturally. I'm always a chicken tikka girl.
That's our biggest seller. That's the one that people know.
It's like the safe bet, isn't it? I've got to have a go. I've got to have a try. I think I've had only had the chicken tikka masala one when I bought them. But it's funny though, because we used to always feel it when we'd go into like the gym and there's Niche magazine, or, you know, my dad would say, oh, picked up the magazine in Sainsbury's, and I've seen yours in and I've gone, oh, I know him. So it's funny that even outside of that, other people do. Okay. I think I might be a convert to tandoori chicken.